What makes episode 6 of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms so fascinating isn't what it shows us outright, but what it quietly invites us to question. On the surface, this episode feels like a moment of aftermath and reflection, a breath taken after the storm of violence. But underneath that apparent calm, the story is planting seeds, hinting at futures, and reframing everything we thought we understood about power, faith, and what kind of men actually shape the course of history. This isn't an episode about answers. It's an episode about uncertainty, and that makes it dangerous in the best possible way. The most striking thing about this chapter is how small everything suddenly feels. After the trials, the bloodshed, and the sacrifice, the world doesn't celebrate, it contracts. Conversations are held in lower volumes. Glances linger far longer than words. This is where the show leans hard into something the entire franchise has always done exceptionally well, reminding us that history doesn't turn on spectacle alone, but on the quiet decisions made when no one is watching. Episode 6 frames its tension not around swords, but around consequences. Who really benefits from what just happened? Who is quietly losing ground while everyone else looks away? And who is learning the wrong lesson from the right outcome? A major theme running through the episode is legacy, especially the idea that legacy is rarely chosen by the person who earns it. Dunk survives, but survival itself becomes a new kind of burden. The show subtly suggests that living through something meaningful can be more destabilizing than dying for it. Dunk doesn't emerge victorious in spirit. He emerges changed, unsure, and increasingly aware that being seen as a true knight means people will start projecting their hopes and ideals onto him. That pressure is new, and the episode lets it sit uncomfortably. Dunk is not ready to be a symbol, and yet symbols are exactly what unstable realms cling to when they sense weakness at the top. This leads directly into the episode's quiet but persistent political tension. The absence left behind by fallen figures isn't just emotional, it's structural. Episode 6 doesn't need to spell out succession crises or looming conflicts because it trusts the audience to feel the imbalance. Conversations between nobles feel cautious, almost rehearsed. There's an unspoken sense that everyone is recalculating their alliances, wondering who might rise and who might fall if the ground shifts again. The show avoids overt prophecy or grand declarations here, but that restraint is intentional. When characters stop speaking openly, it's usually because they're thinking several moves ahead on the board. Faith also takes on a much sharper edge in this episode. Earlier invocations of the Seven, especially the Mother, felt personal and emotional. Now, they feel political. Rituals are observed, prayers are spoken, but there's a distinct undercurrent of doubt about whether divine justice truly intervenes, or whether people simply use the gods to justify outcomes after the fact. Episode 6 lingers on the idea that faith can be both a comfort and a tool, depending entirely on who's wielding it. Some characters lean into belief to make sense of their loss, while others seem to use it to stabilize their authority. To suggest that what happened was inevitable, even righteous, the show never tells us which interpretation is correct, and that ambiguity is the entire point. Egg's perspective becomes especially important here, even when he isn't speaking much. This episode quietly positions him at a crossroads. The romantic idea of knighthood has already been shaken, but now he is confronting something more unsettling, the realization that good intentions don't prevent tragedy, and that being close to power means being close to consequences. Episode 6 shows us Egg watching, listening, absorbing everything. He's learning how adults rationalize violence, how they explain loss, how they reshape events into stories that are easier to live with. The danger isn't that Egg will become cruel overnight. It's that he might become comfortable with compromise far too early in his life. Speculation naturally starts to build around what this episode is setting up rather than what it's resolving. The show hints that peace, if it comes at all, will be temporary. Small lines about unrest in the realm, offhand mentions of lingering loyalties, and the visible strain in authority figures all suggest a kingdom that hasn't healed, only paused. This mirrors one of the franchise's oldest ideas, that conflict in Westeros doesn't end, it simply mutates. Episode 6 feels like the calm in between storms, the moment when characters convince themselves that the worst has passed, even as the audience senses the exact opposite. There's also something deeply unsettling about how normal life resumes. Meals are eaten, horses are saddled, duties continue. This normalization of trauma is one of the episode's most powerful pattern interrupts. Instead of dramatic grief, we get routine. Instead of outrage, we get silence. The show seems to ask whether this is resilience or denial, and whether a society that moves on so quickly from tragedy is doomed to repeat the same cycles. Dunk, notably, struggles with this more than anyone. He remembers too clearly, feels too deeply, and that emotional honesty may end up being his greatest strength or his greatest liability in the world he inhabits. What makes episode 6 especially compelling is how it reframes the very idea of heroism. There's no grand speech declaring what was learned from the conflict. Instead, we're left with glances, pauses, and half-finished thoughts. The episode implies that true change doesn't come from victory, but from discomfort, from the inability to forget, from carrying the weight of what happened even when everyone else is eager to move on. That's a dangerous kind of integrity to have in a world built on convenience and forgetfulness. As the episode closes, it doesn't offer reassurance, it offers unease. The future feels open, but not necessarily hopeful. The characters are standing on paths they don't yet recognize, shaped by events they barely understand, and that's exactly why this chapter matters so much. It's not about what happened, it's about what will be justified because of it. In a story obsessed with cycles, episode 6 feels like the moment the wheel slows down just enough for us to see the cracks forming, right before it starts turning again. What did you all think about the tone of this episode? Let me know your theories for what's next in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, be sure to like and subscribe for more.